Hi folks, this is Forrest Ivy from the Smart Inspector. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the 3 most common deficiencies I find with electrical panels. And now through the magic of editing will I remove the cover on this panel. Well, there you have it folks. Now the cover's off. One thing you want to keep in mind is this is dangerous. Don't go fishing around in your electrical box, you can die. So, if you have the confidence enough to remove your panel and to check things out, I do recommend caution. One tool I always keep in my toolbox is a chopstick. I keep chopsticks in case I need to poke around. I'm going to show you things today using the chopstick. That way I don't have to use my finger because I could die. Number 1, the breakers are oversized for the size of the wires, the conductors. So how would you figure that out? It's simple. The size of the breakers is written right on there. It's clear as day. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. I'll get up close and show you that in a second. So how do you know the size of your conductors, of your wires? Well, you go get a 1-foot section of them and you carry them around with you. Go to your local hardware store, get a 1-foot section of every single gauge that they have there. That way you can compare it to the size of the wires. Sometimes you can see the gauge written right on the wires, but sometimes you can't. So better safe than sorry and just go grab a whole bunch of wires. Here are the sizes of the breakers. There's the numbers written right on them. That's how much amperage they can carry. And if you would like to know what wire gauge can carry what amperage, I'll show that to you now. For example, a 30 amp breaker requires a 10 gauge wire to carry 30 amp. We have 10 written right on there, okay? So, if the wire that is coming out of the breaker is too large, that's a-okay. If it's too small, that means the wire could burn up without ever flipping off the breaker. In this case, these 4 wires, they are larger than 10 gauge, so we have no issues there. So then you just keep going. All of these breakers are 20 amp. That means all of these conductors here should be at least 12 gauge to carry 20 amp. Here we have our 12, okay? So you go down each wire and you just check and make sure that they're at least this size. They can be greater, that's fine, but if they're at least that size, no issues. Why might you even find a oversized breaker for the wires? Wouldn't that be dangerous? Wouldn't an electrician know not to do that? Yes, they would. But maybe you remodeled your house, and maybe you did it yourself, and maybe you bought a book like this one and took on the job. It's quite a big task. If you remodeled your kitchen and what used to be an outlet now powers your range, you could have an issue. You're powering your range, which sucks a lot of amperage, through some tiny wires that used to go to an outlet, and now you have an issue, especially if you changed your breaker out for a one that's the size for your range, but the conductors, the wires in the walls, they haven't changed. You're looking to set your house on fire, and we want to catch that, especially if you're buying a home before you move in there if somebody remodeled. This house was recently remodeled before these people moved in. Now, we didn't find that issue though, so that's wonderful. I guess they didn't do it themselves. Issue number 2, it's going to be double taps. Let me show you what that is. Thank God we didn't find any of that here, but it's simple. It's just when there's more than one wire, let me use my pointer, more than one wire that is in a breaker. So let's say you run out of breaker space and somebody just jams a new wire in there. They want to power some light that they added out here by their pool. Well, that might work, but it's not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to do that. You're pulling too much power through one breaker. You're not supposed to run 2 conductors in one breaker. We don't see that here, so we're good. Similar to double taps is splicing off the main. So you'll see that before power comes in here through this big switch, through this big main breaker. Sometimes people will tap power right off of there and go power something else. I just saw that this week on a house going to power a light in their backyard, and that has no breaker on it. It is a fire hazard. If something were to go wrong there, there's no breaker, it's going to shut it off. Okay, issue number 3. This one's simple. It's missing knockouts. So on your electrical panel covers, you'll see these big holes. These holes are knockouts that have been knocked out, so breakers come through, and whenever you need to flick one on or off, you can just reach up there while it's covering your panel and flick a breaker on and off. Well, if you don't have a breaker in there and there's a missing gap here, then that's just a big hole for insects to come in and out. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen hornets' nests posted up inside. Sometimes the whole thing's full of hornets, and that just is so much fun. So let me show you what that looks like. Here's a sub panel that powers their pool. They have some knockouts here that are missing. Maybe there used to be breakers here, right? And now there's not breakers here. Well, they could just put some breakers in, even if they're not powering anything, it just fills the gap. Because what they have now is a big old hole for insects to come in and set up shop. And they don't pay rent, so they gotta go. Well, there you have it. Those are the 3 main deficiencies I find with electrical panels. Now, are there plenty more? Of course there are. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list of everything that we look for when doing a home inspection when it comes to the electrical system. I just wanted to cover those 3 main ones with you. Are there other questions? Of course there are. What about ground wires? What about aluminum wiring? Why is he playing acoustic guitar when the video is about electricity? There's lots of questions out there, and I understand that. So you'll have to stay tuned and watch the next episodes of The Smart Inspector to see what I'm up to next. So please like, subscribe, hit that bell. That way you get all notifications for my next videos. We'll see you next time on The Smart Inspector.